What's growing on, gardeners? Spring is in the air here on the southeastern coast of North Carolina, and on today's video I'm going to share with you all 10 mistakes killing your seedlings. If you struggle starting seedlings at any point from the seed sowing to the transplanting process, this video is for you. Fix these mistakes now before it is too late.
If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and check out my Amazon store and Spreadshop links in the video description for everything I use in my garden and awesome custom apparel and gear.
Throughout this video, I will be featuring several products that I use to help me start my seeds with the highest germination percentage and success rates possible. For your convenience, I'll place links to all of that stuff down in the video description. Mistake number one so many gardeners make when starting their seeds is they aren't getting the right soil temperature for the seeds to germinate. Namely, they are not using seedling heat mats with seedling heat mat thermostats. How do seeds know exactly when to germinate in nature? Well, they do this based on soil temperature. Soil temperatures are not like air temperatures that fluctuate all over the place. Soil temperatures are very consistent for a time of year, and it takes a long time for soil temperatures to both cool down in the fall and winter and warm back up in the spring. And once those soil temperatures reach that magic number, you'll start to see germination. And the reason why you'll see things like broadleaf weeds and things like that start germinating in your lawn long before you'll start seeing warmer weather things like, let's say you have peppers or watermelon seeds that are randomly sitting in the soil left over from last year. Well, that's because different species of plants germinate upon different temperatures, and your cool season plants germinate at lower soil temperatures than your warm season plants. I want to focus on that optimal range that gets things to germinate as quickly as possible with the highest percentage of success rates. And most of your cool season crops, like your brassicas, your lettuces, your cool, cold hardy herbs, peas, things like that, are going to germinate with an ideal soil temperature between 70 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Meanwhile, your warmer season crops, like your tomatoes, peppers, melons, cucumbers, they want a soil temperature of around 75 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, where they will germinate more quickly if the soil temperature is a little bit warmer. So if you have multiple seedling heat mats and you germinate your cool season crops in different seed trays on different mats, as you do your warm season crops, you'll want a little bit of a dichotomy where you'll set your cool season mat to something like 70 to 75 degrees, whereas your warm season mat will be set around 80 to 85 degrees. But if you're like me and you have a lot of things germinating all on one large seedling heat mat, well, I find that a good compromise temperature is about 78 degrees. It's in that Goldilocks zone where it's not too warm for your cool season stuff to germinate, but it's still warm enough that you'll get really good results with your tomatoes, peppers, melons, and such. A lot of good quality large seedling heat mats actually have charts that give you different germination ranges for various species. So if you have a good one, that's a really handy guide. I was one of those people that for the longest time resisted getting a seedling heat mat controlled by a thermostat, but dialing in exact temperatures is a game changer. If you get the temperatures perfect like you can with a T-stat, you will get the maximum germination rate possible in the shortest amount of time. All this stuff is super cheap, it's worth the investment, and it'll last indefinitely. Mistake number two is your soil is too dry. This is very simple on its face. Why is it we store our seeds for the long term in a cool, dry, dark place? Well, that's because in cool temperatures, in absence of moisture, your seeds aren't going to germinate. And if you take those seeds and you sow them in potting mix or any kind of soil that completely dries out, they're never going to germinate. So it's very important that you monitor your seeds, you check them every single day, and you make sure that your mix does not dry out, because if you don't keep it adequately moist, they're never going to germinate for you. Mistake number three is the biggest mistake of all, and that is keeping your seeds too wet. It's probably the most common mistake that new gardeners and even experienced gardeners make sometimes starting plants from seed. It's my number one mistake as well, and it's something you really have to monitor. Look, if you keep your seeds too dry and you catch that mistake and you start adding adequate amounts of water, they're going to eventually germinate, because dryness does preserve seeds. It's not going to destroy them, at least. Well, if you keep your mix too moist, those seeds are going to rot. And once they rot, they will never germinate. That condition will destroy the seeds permanently. Unfortunately, this is something that many of us gardeners learn the hard way because this all comes down to discipline. Watering is an art form, and we have to be disciplined to make sure that we don't just go into robot mode and just start pouring too much water on all of our seedlings. And if you're like me and you're starting many different seedlings, well, since you're manually adding water, you may be adding more water to some cells than others, which means some are going to dry out more quickly. So that means it is incumbent upon us to test each individual cell or each individual peat pellet and just make sure that they are not too wet. So this is something that you learn over time. This is truly an art form. It is very important that we don't overwater our plants, because if we do and our seeds rot, that's it, folks. One of the biggest tips that I can give you when it comes to watering your seedlings is this. If the seeds have not yet germinated and you're on the fence as to whether you should add water, it's kind of in that in-between stage, it's always better to err on the side of caution and not add water. Because if the seeds haven't yet germinated and it gets a little too dry, while that will delay the germination process, it will not destroy the seed. So it's better to be a little light on the watering than so heavy that your seeds rot. However, once the seedlings germinate, then you have to be careful, because if you let them dry out completely, those little roots obviously need moisture and they can't reach around the soil very much. So you have to make sure that the soil stays adequately moist from there on out, that the seedlings won't dehydrate. Mistake number 4 is you are not storing your seeds properly. If you're like me and you order fresh seed every single year but you don't use them all, and you like holding on to them and storing them to use in future years, it is very important that you store those seeds properly. And seeds should be stored in a cool, dry, dark place in absence of any windows. Now, where I live in North Carolina, we don't have basements, so I store all of my seed packets in Ziploc bags, and then I take those Ziploc bags and I place them in a cardboard box, and then I put it in my clothes closet, because my clothes closet is the coolest, driest, darkest location in my entire house and has no windows, and it stays about 65 to 68 degrees all throughout the year. That is my best spot. So find a spot in your house like that. Do not put them in a place that is warm and humid. Do not store them by light. All of those things will oxidize and degrade your seeds or possibly cause them to rot. Now, in my experience, if you store them properly, seeds will still have excellent germination after 2 to 3 years. You'll start to see a slowdown in germination around 4 to 5 years, with a significant drop-off if your seed is beyond 5 years old. But I found even with seeds that are 5 years old or more, you can overseed, put 2 or 3 or more in each seed cell, and often something comes up. So seed can last a pretty long time if you store it properly. But if you don't, you can destroy that seed, and no matter what you do, none of them will germinate. Mistake number 5 so many gardeners make when starting seeds is they plant each seed at the wrong depth. And this is highly variable based on species. Every species is a little bit different. And the fastest way to figure out exactly what your planting depth should be is to take the seed packet, flip it over, and it will say the planting depth right there. For example, things like tomatoes and peppers often have to be sown a 1/4 inch deep. Things like beets and radishes are often sown 1/2 inch deep. Peas and string beans may be sown up to 1 full inch deep, whereas things like carrots, they need barely any soil cover at all and can be sown anywhere from an 1/8 inch to a 1/4 inch deep. And if you get this wrong, especially if you plant them too deeply, they may never germinate. It is very, very important that you consult the back of each seedling packet, make sure that you are sowing at the proper depth. Realize there is a little bit of wiggle room. If you're not absolutely perfect, it is fine. But if you overdo it and you sow things way too deeply, don't expect them to come up. That is why mulching is so great at suppressing weed growth, because if you bury things too deeply, they're not going to germinate. Mistake number 6 is a biggie, and that is your seedlings are damping off. Once you get your seeds to germinate, this is probably the #1 killer of seedlings. And once this sets in, there is no cure, and you can lose every single seedling. Damping off disease is a condition where you'll have your seedlings germinate, but then right above the soil line, you'll start to see the stems wither away and the plants will start to droop and then they will break off completely. That is caused by damping off disease. Now, damping off disease is a fungal condition that can encompass a wide range, a plethora of different fungi. So it's not like it is just one strain of fungi that is killing your seedlings, but they're all caused by the same thing, and that is overwatering. When you water your seedlings, it is very important that you occasionally let the top of your soil dry out, because if you keep the top of your soil constantly moist, especially when growing indoors, because when you're indoors there is no UV from the sun sterilizing the top of your soil, well, they will colonize various fungal diseases that are going to start eating away at the stems of your plants, and this can happen fairly quickly. If you keep your plants too wet for simply a few days on end, that can colonize a fungal disease that will start wiping out your seedlings, and there's really no way to fight back once it starts. You just have to start all new seedlings. So the biggest tip I can give you when it comes to preventing damping off disease is to simply not overwater your plants. You can water in the morning, but don't water again until you start to see the top little bit of soil dry out. And you'll know it's drying out because the top of the soil will start pooling away from the sides of the container. There will be a little bit of a gap. And when your soil constantly dries out like that, the fungi can't grow and thrive. So that is how you protect your seedlings. You just have to walk a fine line because remember, these seedlings are very fragile and they have small roots. So if you let them dry out completely, they will die as well. So you can't let them wilt, but you do have to be disciplined enough that you allow the top of your soil to dry out a little bit so you don't colonize that disease. I know that this can sound really confusing, but gardening is an art form, and there's probably no bigger art form in gardening than actually irrigating. Maybe pruning, but pruning and irrigation are the most arty things in gardening, and the only way you can really learn how to do that is through experience, and even with experience sometimes we still make some mistakes. So don't be afraid of this. Just remember, don't overwater your seedlings, don't keep them saturated, or else you're going to have all sorts of problems. Mistake number 7 is also one of the most common mistakes gardeners make after their seeds germinate, and that is they allow their seedlings to get leggy. Legginess is a term that describes when a seedling gets very, very tall with a very, very thin stem, and it's almost growing straight up like a hair. It has no thickness in the stem, it has very small leaves, and it looks like at any given moment it's going to fall over and collapse under its own slenderness and weight. And the reason why this happens is because the light that you are growing your seedlings under is not intense enough. So plants always try to grow up towards the sun, and when you're growing plants outside in the full sun, this is never going to be an issue because no matter what time of year it is, if the plants are getting full sun, the real sun is always going to be plenty intense for plants to grow. However, this is not the case with seedlings started indoors. If you're growing your seedlings indoors underneath grow lights, and either the grow lights themselves are underpowered and far too weak, or you have them too high up above the seedlings, you are going to have your plants try and rapidly grow up and touch the sun. That is why plants grow up. They are always trying to reach for that sunlight. So if the plants are not getting enough energy for them to photosynthesize, they are going to react by growing up as tall as possible instead of focusing on growing thick, healthy stems and thick, healthy leaves. And if this gets too out of hand, the plants are going to fall over and they're going to die, and you are going to have to start all over again. Now, the way you avoid this completely is to ensure that your plants are simply getting enough intense light. You have to make sure that your grow lights are sized properly, and you have to make sure that they're close enough to your seedlings. Now, please be aware, this is going to vary dramatically based on the different brands of grow lights that you buy and how strong they are. There is no hard and fast rule. For example, if you go and you buy shop lights, maybe those shop lights only have to be 4 to 6 inches away from the plant, but if you get a high-powered LED grow light and you do that same spacing, they could nuke your plants and just burn them up completely. So it's very important that you consult the instructions of your grow lights. They are all going to tell you how close or how far away the light should be given the stage of your plants. And it will usually come with some kind of chart that will describe how close they will be based on the stage of the growth they are in. For example, if all you're doing is what I'm doing and starting plants from seed to grow seedlings that are 3 to 4 weeks old, and then you're going to transition them outside, they won't need to be as close to the plants as if you're trying to grow a mature pepper plant and get that to produce fruit indoors, like you're growing in an underground growing operation where you're trying to produce in a dark basement or something like that. You're going to need more intense light for larger, more mature plants to go through the flowering and blooming process. So it's very important that you think all of these things through. If you're like me and you're only starting seedlings to transplant out in your vegetable garden and you don't have some kind of operation going on in a basement where you're trying to produce mature fruit, you're not going to need super powerful grow lights. But either way, I'll link to the ones that I use down in the video description. Mistake number 8 that so many gardeners are making is they are not checking on their seedlings daily. Seedlings are like infants. They are very high maintenance. You have to check on them every single day, maybe even multiple times a day. Check on them first thing in the morning before you go to work. Check on them as soon as you get home from work. You have to keep eyes on them. You need to make sure that you don't have anything drying out, anything wilting, anything that is getting too leggy. You need to check them to make sure that no fungal diseases like damping off diseases are taking hold. They are high maintenance. You cannot go a day and not look at your seedlings at all, or else all kinds of problems can ensue. Now look, I'm not saying that you can't set up some kind of automated process. I'm sure you can, but most of you are like me. You're just doing this in your office or in your living room in a corner somewhere underneath some grow lights or a really sunny window. If that is the case and you're not a professional with a professional setup, you have to do your due diligence and just check on them every single day. Don't ignore them. Don't forget about them. If you are a forgetful person, take your phone and set an automatic reminder, an alarm that's going to go off at the same time every single day. So you say, oh yeah, it's seedling check time. And then go over and check on your seedlings. You don't have to spend more than 5 minutes looking them over. Just check them and make sure there are no problems. Make sure nothing is overwatered, underwatered, no diseases forming, no pest infestations happening. It doesn't take long, but you do have to check. Mistake number 9 so many gardeners make when they start plants from seed is they fail to fertilize them. Folks, when you start seedlings, especially seedlings indoors in potting mix, it is critical that we fertilize them on a routine. Now, initially, when a seed germinates, they get their nutrients from the coating of that seed as it breaks down. But the coating on that seed only provides enough nutrition for that plant to basically put on the 2 initial leaves whose only job is to burst through the soil. After it puts on its first set of true leaves, it is going to need some kind of fertilizer. Now, there are some seed starting mixes you can get that already has fertilizer in them, and that will help buy you a little bit of time. For example, the Miracle-Gro seed starting mixes, a lot of them have added fertilizers in them. Check the back of the bag to make sure they have additional nutrients. But a lot of the organic fertilizers, like the Jiffy Organic Mix, doesn't have any fertilizer in it at all. It's an inert medium. So as soon as that seed coating wears off, which is going to happen a week or 2 after the seed germinates, they are going to need food. So that begs the question, what do we give our plants for food and how often do we do it? Well, we have to give them something water soluble if we are starting our seeds indoors, because those mixes don't really have much nutrition in them, if not any at all, and there's no microbiome there that can break down granular organic fertilizers. We can't give them granular fertilizers. It won't work. We want something we can mix in a watering can. And one of the best things we can give them, honestly, is going to be something like good old-fashioned Miracle-Gro all-purpose. Now, I know a lot of you don't want to buy Miracle-Gro products, so you can just go out and get like a Jack's 20-20-20 or a J.R. Peters 20-20-20. Jack's is made by J.R. Peters. It's the same stuff. Now sure, you can use something like Alaska fish fertilizer. This will feed them just fine, and you can be 100% organic. But be aware, if you're starting the seeds indoors, something like that is going to stink to high heaven. So since I start all of my seedlings in my office where I edit all of these videos and I don't want my house to stink, I just give them the water-soluble Jack's 20-20-20 or Miracle Grow All-Purpose. Now, how much do we give the plants and how often? Well, look at the back of the box, and whatever the recommended dosage is, cut that dosage in half. So if it's 1 tablespoon per gallon, give them half a tablespoon. If it's 1 teaspoon per gallon, give them half a teaspoon, because these plants are very fragile and they can't take full fertilizing yet. Then we want to give them a little bit of this water-soluble feed about every 7 to 10 days. If you use some kind of mix, like a Miracle Grow mix that already has fertilizer in it, you can probably skip the first feeding that comes on when the plants put on their true leaves, but after that, you're still going to want to feed them every 7 to 10 days. Otherwise, they're going to run out of nutrients and they're going to start turning yellow or purple. If you see your plants turning light green or yellow, or they're getting purple veins in them, that means they are developing nutrient deficiencies and you have to give them a complete water-soluble fertilizer. And mistake number 10 many gardeners make when it comes to starting seeds is they don't acclimate them to true sun. We call this hardening them off. You see, when we start seeds indoors underneath grow lights or in front of a sunny window or underneath a pop-up greenhouse or even a real deal greenhouse, they are not hardened off to the real sun, which is a much wider spectrum and has powerful UV radiation all throughout the year. So if you grow these plants completely indoors, they are not going to be resistant to the UV index of the sun. So if you simply bring them outside, they are going to get nuked, scorched, destroyed. You will lose every single one of your seedlings. They will burn up. Now, acclimation happens over about 7 to 14 days. You do this slowly and progressively. And these larger seedlings right here are finally hardened off to the true sun, and I could put them out in my garden if I wanted to, as long as I was sure there was no more frosts and freezes for the tomatoes for the year. But these seedlings right here, I just pulled them out from underneath my grow light an hour ago. I can't leave these out in the sunlight for more than 30 minutes on a bright, sunny, clear March day like this, or they will get annihilated. They have to be slowly and progressively hardened off, so I need to bring them back inside in the shade in my sunroom. So, how do we harden off our seedlings? Slowly and progressively. The best thing to do is to wait for a completely overcast day where there is no chance of any sun peeking through, but it's not going to rain or anything like that, and then set them outdoors in a protected location away from the wind, because they probably haven't stiffened up just yet, and let them sit on that really cloudy, overcast day, and that will gently introduce them to mild UV radiation. If you don't have a series of overcast days that you can exploit, what you want to do is you want to bring them out into the gentle morning sun for about an hour or two, then carry them back indoors and put them in the late evening sun an hour or two before sunset, and let them get introduced to the weak sun in the beginning of the day and the end of the day as it's transitioning above and below the trees. Do not expose them to the strong sun of the day above the tree line just yet. After you go through this a few days and a few nights, you can slowly introduce it into an extra hour's worth of sunlight every single day until you're about 7 to 10 days in. Then they should be relatively acclimated. If you're having really sunny weather like we are, you have to be a little bit more conservative, and it could take longer, up to 2 weeks. But the important thing is that you slowly introduce this true sunlight. Another good place to do it is in a sunroom. If you have a sunroom, you can bring them out into the sunroom for a few days, and that will help. But even sunroom acclimated plants are not the same as true sun acclimated plants. They would only be a part of the process. You'll still have to acclimate them to true sun. So use the mornings and the afternoons to your advantage, and especially rely on those cloudy days. They are just the best to acclimate your seedlings. I know some of you are saying, I work a full-time job. I can't set them out in the morning because it's still dark out when I leave. Well, the way that I always did this was I would go to work all day, then I would come home at around 5 o'clock, and then I would set them outside. Luckily, it's light out until about 7 o'clock. right now, since we're beyond daylight saving time, pretty much everywhere. So those 2 hours are really critical. Then I would spend my weekends introducing them to more intense sunlight. And if I were lucky enough to get like a rain day in the middle of the week, I would take my plants and I would set them underneath a rain gutter or in a protected location when I knew it was going to be cloudy and rainy all day, and I would set them outside on those days because the rain gutters would protect them from any kind of rainfall and they wouldn't drown, but they'd still absorb some of the UV light. So you can play games like that. It may take a little bit more time to fully acclimate them, but even if you work a full-time job and you can't do this in the morning, you can still do this. And that right there are the 10 most common seed starting mistakes that are killing your seedlings and how to fix them. So everybody, I sure hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and please ring the notification bell so you're notified when I release more videos like these. For all of the individual products that I featured in this video, I placed direct links to them down in the video description for your convenience. For everything I use in my yard and garden in real life, that is linked in my Amazon storefront in the video description. While you're down there in the video description, check out my website, themillennialgardener.com, for all things gardening and for custom home design merch if you want to support my channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video. Does anybody else's pup inspect all of the groceries when you bring groceries home? I just went grocery shopping a little late today, and Dale went through and checked all of the grocery bags for any contraband or explosives, and they all checked out. He was especially interested in all of this beautiful 92% grass-fed ground beef we got. Maybe we can make an extra lean burger for Dale Burger. Would you like something like that? He's such a good inspector. The only thing he didn't check was the distilled water. That was nice and safe. Does anybody else's pups inspect all of their groceries? Because Dale certainly does. And I think he wants one of these little sweet potatoes right here. Maybe in a minute, buddy. They're a little bit too spicy, but I'll give you a different treat, okay?